As a child of the 1980s, I grew up watching Saturday morning cartoons and playing with the action figures based on these shows. Animated cartoons from this time period, like the Transformers, G.I. Joe, and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, were basically 22-minute long toy commercials marketed to sell toys to 6 to 12-year-olds. This formula was extremely successful. So successful, in fact, that toy companies began to license R-rated films to convert into family-friendly franchises. It made sense from a marketing standpoint. Why create a new intellectual property when one already exists that children and their parents both recognize? R-rated films such as Rambo, RoboCop, and Police Academy transformed into kid-friendly animated cartoons, each with an accompanying toy line. When you think about it, these films were extremely odd choices to market toward children. Rambo was about a soldier with PTSD who became a one-man killing machine. RoboCop was a police officer who was brutally murdered in the line of duty and brought back as a cyborg, and Police Academy was a raunchy adult comedy that was the complete opposite of family-friendly. This was a time period where merchandise from the horror film A Nightmare on Elm Street was actually marketed towards kids. Of course, there was no cartoon for that one, but it would have been interesting to see what that would have looked like. Kenner Products, a company who achieved massive success with another toy line based on a motion picture franchise, was looking to replicate their success and began eyeing another popular sci-fi film. In their eyes, one specific R-rated property had all of the elements to build a lucrative toy line off of. One with soldiers with big personalities and bigger guns, and also a variety of creepy alien adversaries to blow to pieces. That film was Aliens. Aliens was a science fiction film directed by James Cameron and released to cinemas in 1986. It was a sequel to the 1979 film Alien, directed by Ridley Scott, and while the first film was a claustrophobic horror movie, the second was an action-packed thrill ride. Both of these movies had a profound effect on me as a child, and I cite them as two of my all-time favorite films. I can vividly remember the first time I saw the original Alien film. My father and my uncle had rented a VHS copy and were watching it on TV, and after hearing their reactions I had to see what the fuss was about, so I peeked around the corner to watch a few minutes. What I saw scared me half to death and was the cause of quite a few sleepless nights in my childhood. The alien xenomorph was terrifying. I mean, look at this thing. Not only did it have a creepy bug-like appearance and razor-sharp teeth and claws, it also had concentrated acid or blood and was absolutely vicious. The second film struck a different chord with me. While the original Alien film had one alien terrorizing a bunch of blue-collar workers, the second one was more of an action movie where a bunch of Marines battled hundreds of the xenomorphs. This movie was filled with tons of quotable dialogue and memorable characters, and I absolutely loved it. There really wasn't a lot of merchandise tied into this film at the time of its original release, but 6 years later in 1992, a series of action figures based on this film hit store shelves. Although quite a bit of creative license was used, these were still toys of some of my favorite movie characters, and I couldn't wait to collect them all. It was even rumored that a cartoon series set to coincide with the release of this toy line was in the works, but unfortunately no cartoon ever materialized. Many years later, alleged stills from an unaired pilot episode of a cartoon based on the Aliens films and toys was released online, which created more questions about the lost animated series. Hopefully I can put these rumors to rest as we dive into the legend of this lost cartoon. Operation Aliens was an attempt by Kenner Products to convert elements from the 1986 film Aliens into a child-friendly franchise. In 1992, Kenner began producing a line of action figures marketed toward the targeted demographic of 6 to 12-year-olds. In addition to this toy line, there were other bits of miscellaneous merchandise branded with the Operation Aliens license, such as a handheld game, school supplies, and various other collectibles. The action figures were split into two factions: the heroic Space Marines and their evil adversaries, the Aliens. The Space Marines were redesigned versions of Ripley and the Colonial Marines characters from the film, which is a bit odd considering many of these characters didn't even make it to the end of the movie. The Aliens were also redesigned. These new versions of the alien had characteristics from real-life animals configured into their appearances to create a greater variety of xenomorphs, and also make more bad guys for the toy line. Like many franchises from this era, an animated series was rumored to be released in conjunction with these action figures, continuing the trend of having a 22-minute long toy commercial airing on Saturday mornings. The Aliens franchise was making a bit of a resurgence during this time period as a sequel to Aliens known as Alien 3 was set to arrive in theaters. This movie had very little in common with the previous film, and the cartoon wisely was going to be based on the adventures of Lieutenant Ellen Ripley and the Colonial Marines battling the threat of the Xenomorphs, and not set around Ripley's time in an all-male prison like in Alien 3. This new film did not do well at the box office, and rumor has it that the poor reception of Alien 3 resulted in the animated series being pulled. The toys still made it to store shelves, but the name Operation Aliens had been dropped, and the action figures were released under the Aliens banner. The miscellaneous licensed product bearing the name Operation Aliens were never released in mass market. After seeing leaked storyboards and screenshots, Aliens fans believe that there was a lost pilot episode of an Operation Aliens animated series floating around somewhere. There is a legitimate reason why this program never aired. The Operation Aliens cartoon never existed. Margaret Loesch was the head of Fox Kids during the early 90s and responsible for bringing some classic cartoons to our TV screens. She stated in an interview that Kenner had approached Fox about airing an animated series to coincide with their action figure releases, but the cartoon was never greenlit. Loesch said, "I do have a recollection that Kenner Toys may have had the merchandising rights to Aliens, and we had a good relationship with Kenner's president Bruce Stein in the early 90s. It may have been that we discussed doing an Aliens cartoon, but ultimately probably decided not to do it because we would have had to modify it to make it acceptable to our broadcast standards and practices. I just don't remember. What I do know is that we did not develop it, and we, Fox Kids, never made a pilot for it." So what about the storyboards and screenshots that were released on the internet? Well, these screen captures were from animated segments designed for commercials for the toy line. Animation professional Will Mignon was asked to storyboard, produce, and direct animated segments for 3 Aliens toy commercials. The animation was scrapped in favor of using live-action footage of the new toys, so there never was an animated series based on the motion picture Aliens, and you know what? That may be a good thing. In the eyes of many fans of the franchise, the film was perfect, and an animated series geared towards children simply to sell toys may have just missed the point of what made the film so special. The relationships between characters, the horror elements, the graphic violence, that would all be replaced by cheesy dialogue and plots that were written just to showcase the new toy set to hit store shelves. This may not be great news for fans of the Kenner action figures who are hoping to see a lost pilot of an Aliens cartoon, but here's a bit of a consolation prize. NECA Toys has remade many of the classic Kenner toys with updated sculpts and retro packaging, so fans of the 90s can start collecting Aliens toys just like they did 30 years ago. Till next time.
That's it, man. Game over, man.